Namaste everyone, welcome to this week's Beyond the Headlines with me, Deepthi J. Verma. We all know how in August 1947, when after 300 years in India, the British finally left, the subcontinent was split into two independent nations, Hindu majority India and Muslim majority Pakistan. Immediately, what followed was one of the greatest migrations in human history as millions of Muslims trekked to West and East Pakistan, that later came to be called Bangladesh, while millions of Hindus and Sikhs headed for India. There were also millions that never made it home, leaving in its wake one of the worst genocides as well as refugee crisis of modern times. What happened has been documented by popular cinema with movies like Bhag Milkha Bhag, Pinjar, 1947 Earth and many more, and is continuing to be documented by social media platforms and citizen initiatives like 1947 Archives, where thousands of stories and first people accounts recorded by citizen journalists all over the world have poured out. Now, although documented history says the genocide on both sides was unprecedented, in Punjab and Bengal provinces located on the two borders shared with Pakistan, the carnage was especially intense. A lot of books have also been written about how most of what took place against Hindus and Sikhs seemed a little more organized than just mob massacres, with signs that it might be state-sponsored with the Pakistani military involved. You must be wondering, why is it important to remember those numbers on Pakistan's Independence Day today? It's because while India celebrates Swaraj, proudly protecting its minorities, the Hindu and Sikh atrocities in Pakistan continue even after 74 years. So much so, if you search for Hindu atrocities in Pakistan on the internet, you will not see some old person's account of what happened to them in 1947 or even 1971, but mostly of young girls and families crying against forced abduction and conversion in 2021. According to the book Muslim League Attack on Sikhs and Hindus in the Punjab 1947, between the years 1941 to 51, almost 4.75 million Hindus and about 2.5 million Sikhs were either killed, forcibly converted to Islam or forced to flee. Most important factor in this massacre of Hindus and Sikhs is that the Pakistani government and military was directly involved and responsible, and it was not the work of Muslim mobs alone. This was a planned move and an attempt at ethnic cleansing of Hindus and Sikhs from Pakistan. Now, many Hindus and Sikhs moved to refugee camps later from where they were moved, but loot, arson, rape were fairly common. The plight of West Pakistani Hindus, those Hindus who chose to remain behind at the time of the partition of India, unwittingly agreeing to a lifetime of atrocities, is something we encounter in the news almost every day. These wounds of partition continue to fester. The struggles of divided families on either side of the border, the lynching of minorities, attacks on places of worship, the saga of atrocities on Hindus and Sikhs in Pakistan does not end with partition, sadly. For example, until 2017, when the Hindu Marriage Act was passed by the National Assembly of Pakistan, there was no legal recognition of a Hindu marriage as per laws of the country. This meant that the marriage would not be considered as kosher anywhere in the world. It is to be noted that this is still not a law all over Pakistan. Even now, the law applies only in 3 provinces, Punjab, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the capital territory around Islamabad. Earlier, Sindh province passed its own bill to permit legal registration of Hindu marriages in February 2016. But this bill included a controversial clause that says that the marriage stands annulled if one of the spouse converts. This clause does nothing to check abductions and forced conversions. Also, a high percentage of Hindus in Pakistan are SC/STs and are employed by landlords literally as slaves. The landlords mint heavy profits, but the Hindus who work as bonded labor are paid in pennies and remain in poverty. They are denied a proper education, which destroys their prospects at a better livelihood. The National Assembly of Pakistan abolished the Bonded Labour Act in 1992, but bonded labour is still practiced widely, especially in Sindh. There's also the big matter of forced conversions. A heart-rending video of a Hindu girl who was kidnapped forcibly converted to Islam and married off to a man in Pakistan in February 2021, had recently surfaced on social media. In the video, the Hindu girl is on a terrace of a house, crying and asking people to help her in getting back to her home. She was later identified as Reena Megwar, who was kidnapped on February 13th earlier this year, converted to Islam and then married off. The family of the girl had filed an FIR, but the police failed to rescue the girl. Hindu girls are leading a particularly vulnerable life in the country where forced conversion of Hindus into Islam has become a common norm. In 2021 itself, there have been many reported cases. Like a 22-year-old Hindu girl named Aarti Bai was abducted from the Sindh province, forcibly converted to Islam and married off. Instead of punishing the culprits, a court in Pakistan prevented the girl's family from meeting her. On 11th March 2021, a 13-year-old Hindu girl named Kavita from another area of Sindh was reportedly abducted, then forcibly converted to Islam. A couple of days later, her house was set on fire by unidentified miscreants. Around the same time, one also heard of a journalist in Pakistan who was shot dead by unknown assailants for exposing the role of politicians and clerics in facilitating this forceful conversion of Hindu girls. And even the courts failed to do justice for Hindus in Pakistan. In fact, in some cases, the courts have empowered the culprits responsible for abducting and forcibly converting the Hindu and Christian minorities. The court's bias is evident in the latest incident where an 8-year-old Hindu child has been charged under the draconian blasphemy law after it was alleged that he had ended up urinating on a carpet in the library of an Islamic religious school, showing yet another case of blatant human rights violation. The child, whose name has not been disclosed, was unaware of the controversy as he's underage, but his family now says that they had to flee their shops and work, and that the entire community of faith was scared and had to take refuge at a safer spot, fearing the backlash from the majority Muslim community. According to well-known Pakistani educationist A.H. Nair, hatred against Hindus is couched in a very subtle way in Pakistani textbooks. He explains when the history of Pakistan is taught, the battle between Muslim League and Congress is portrayed as a fight between Muslims and Hindus. In a sense, Nair says, Hindus are projected as villains in Pakistani textbooks in a bid to justify the founding of Pakistan and the politics behind it. A video released by BBC Urdu on YouTube shows this deep-rooted hatred and bias against Hindus in Pakistan. The Pakistani Hindus in the video quote various school textbooks to showcase how they endorse hate against the Hindu religion. One of them, who identifies himself as Rajesh Kumar, cited how a Pakistani school textbook that described Hindus as kafirs or those who worship idols, and alleged that Hindus were misogynists who buried their newborns alive if they happened to be girls. Like Rajesh, others interviewed also felt that Pakistani textbooks portrayed their faith incorrectly. Dr. Rajwanti Kumar, a Hindu girl in Pakistan, said that she was often jeered at by her classmates because she was a Hindu, and some of her classmates even asked her to celebrate the Independence Day not on August 14 but on August 15, India's Independence Day. The government of Pakistan has also reportedly failed to protect Hindu places of worship and burial grounds. By 2014, only 20 out of 428 Hindu places of worship entrusted to Evacuee Trust Property Board were operational. In the Bhong city of the conservative Islamic district of Rahim Yar Khan in Punjab, the Hindu community fled their homes after an agitated Muslim mob launched an attack on the Siddhivinayak temple and desecrated their idols. They then set the temple on fire. Now, historically, every time there's a disturbance or clash over religious issues in India, it is accompanied by mass violence of the worst kind on Hindus in Pakistan, leading to an exodus of Hindus from Pakistan. Yet, the refugees migrating from Pakistan to India to escape these atrocities are as yet not given the status of refugees by UNHRC. Congress leader J.V. Shergill has urged Union Minister for External Affairs S. Jaishankar to immediately evacuate Hindus and Sikhs from conflict-ridden Afghanistan. But what about those in Pakistan? Now, CAA's avowed objective is to enable conferment of Indian citizenship upon members of minority communities who hail from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Do we really need proof that minorities are persecuted in these Islamic republics? The acclaimed Pakistani historian Aisha Jalal called Partition a defining moment that is neither beginning nor end. Partition continues to influence how the peoples and states of post-colonial South Asia envisage their past, present, and future. On Pakistan's Independence Day, let's not forget how for a large number of Hindus and Sikhs living in Pakistan, this is absolutely true.